Welcome back to the Digital Imaging channel. I'm Will. Today I'm be going through your guide to microfilm scanning. First, what is microfilm? Microfilm is a record format that stores micro reproductions of images on film, basically by photographing original materials and then shrinking them in size so they can be reproduced on a microfilm format. So one, that can be done either from the actual original material, so taking a camera, photographing those images such as books, standard office documents, engineering drawings, oversized documents, things like that. So you photograph it and then process it onto film, or what you can also do is take already digitized images and through what's called archive writing, produce microfilm from those digital images. Now that you know what microfilm is in general, there are various types of microfilm that will affect your project. And so if you're gonna be doing a scanning project and you contact a company like us, we're gonna ask you a few questions like how many you have, what's on the microfilm, but also what type is it? So in the broadest sense, you have two main types, and that's 16mm and 35mm. And within those, there are other nuances that can change how the film is scanned, how the images are processed, how everything's captured and indexed. So within those two broad types of 16 and 35mm, you have a 100-foot film or 215-foot film. So that is the actual length of the roll of film, how much microfilm there physically is. So there's 100 feet or 215. You have simplex, which is one image per frame, or duplex, which is two images per frame. Typically, it'll be an image on top of an image within that strip of film. You have open reel or cartridge type film, which won't really affect the scanning, but it's important for you to know when you're talking to someone about it. Then you have comic or cine mode. And comic is if you're holding the roll, the strip of film open like this, the images are right reading going across, but basically horizontally. So that's comic. Cine mode is if you're holding the strip top to bottom vertically, the images are right reading from the top going down. Then you have reduction ratio, which is basically how small that image is shrunk on the film when you take it from the original document. Typically, you're gonna see 24x reduction, which means if you take like an office-sized 8.5 by 11 document and it's at 24x reduction on microfilm, that film image is 1/24th of the original. Then you could have 42x is the other kind of secondary common type. And what that does is allows you to put more images on a single roll of film. Blips are another piece of the puzzle with microfilm, and what those are is if you have your microfilm image sitting there on the film, there's gonna be like a marking underneath it, like a little square underneath, and that's called a blip. There can be single level, which is just kind of a thin blip, double level, which is a wider one. What those indicate, if it's just single level, that's typically just, it's a frame. So it's frame 1000, 1001, 1002, 1003. Double level typically indicates a new document. So if you have a double level on a frame, that would indicate this is a new file, and then every single level behind it is part of that file until you get to the next double level. And what blipping does is if you're gonna keep using the microfilm and you have a CAR system, what's called a computer assisted retrieval system, you type in the frame number based on those blips, and the physical microfilm machine will zip to that frame that you typed in, maybe 2112, it'll zip to that frame so you can see the image. If you work with us, we can actually integrate that CAR system that you may have into our digital reel application, so you can continue to type those frames and go right to the image based on your existing index system. And then lastly, you might see something that's called duo or serpentine film. So that's if you have duplex microfilm, and so you have two rows of images basically. The image order will actually wrap around the entire length of film. So if you have a 215-foot roll of duplex microfilm, what that does is mean the order of the images actually starts in the beginning, goes all the way to the end of the 215 feet, then goes back to the beginning. That's the order of the actual images. And that's important because if you're scanning them, if you don't know the order, how duo or serpentine film works, when you organize the digital images after the fact, they'll be out of order. Overall, it may sound a bit confusing, but it's just important to know there are different types, and you're not really expected to know that if you do a scanning project and you contact a scanning company like BMI. But if we start using those terminologies so that you understand what's going on, and having a little bit of knowledge about the different types of film will help you as you go through your project. How to figure out how many rolls of microfilm you have. So if you just have a small collection, say a couple dozen, maybe even a couple hundred, you can likely count those individually. Not too difficult, it won't take that much time. The difficulty comes when you have multiple hundreds or thousands of rolls and you're thinking, I'm not gonna count every individual roll, but to get a ballpark number, but you do wanna have a general idea of how many you're gonna scan. So when you contact a scanning company, so to quantify the amount of microfilm you have, let's say they're in banker's boxes and they're stored on shelves. If you have 16mm film in banker's boxes, if it's packed nicely, packed full, you're gonna have about 90 per box. If you have 35mm film, it's gonna be roughly 50 per box. So if you have 10 boxes of 16mm film, you probably have around 900 or so rolls. That's just a quick way to extrapolate. The cost to scan your microfilm is going to vary based on a number of factors, but in general, if you have a 100-foot simplex microfilm, you're gonna be roughly between $20 and $40. And it's a very ballpark, just to give you an idea of where you might start. That's gonna depend on quantity, how many you have. If you have 215-foot film, that's gonna be different than if you have 100-foot film. If you have duplex, it could be different than if you have simplex. If you have duo serpentine film, that may affect the price because it requires a different method of scanning. So many different things will go into this price, but a good ballpark is $20 to $40 per roll. One of the major factors of that price is going to be how many. If you have a smaller quantity, you're going to be on the higher range. If you have 5,000 rolls, you're going to be on the lower end of that range in general. And the other part of the project that's going to be a huge factor on the price is the indexing, which is how you organize the digital images after they're scanned. The simplest way is roll level indexing, just replicating what's on that microfilm box label and capturing that. But if you want to go down the granular path, you're going to be at the, let's say, image level. That's going to be much more expensive. So not only the quantity and type of film that you're going to be scanning, but also the indexing and a couple other things will affect the price. But at a high level, the way we scan your microfilm will be one. Well, let's assume we have your microfilm contract. He's done all that stuff. We start with the milestone 1 proof of concept process. That's basically a testing stage of the project. So we can use our build, test, refine methodology to get the project off on the right foot. What we're going to do is create your process flow that's unique to your project. We're going to run a sample batch of your microfilm through the entire process to make sure everything works. That's the testing phase. Then we're going to move forward scanning the rest of the microfilm. Once the milestone is done, we're going through the remainder of the project. The next major step is the film prep, which is looking at the physical film for any issues. Maybe we have to splice some materials together, fix some tears, things like that, and then getting density checks. And density checks are where we're taking a density reading at the beginning, middle, and end of the roll to get an average density that will then be put into the scanner calibration for that individual roll to get the optimal images across the entire roll. Once the scanning is done, we move into the post-scan image processing phase, which includes quality assurance checks. Maybe we're applying OCR text search to your images. Maybe we have to do some image manipulation like rotating to make images right reading. And then there's also the indexing, which is organizing and naming the files based on what the scope of work that you asked for entails and creating those digital images and digital records so you can access them effectively once they're delivered to you. Viewing and using your digital images once they're delivered is a bit separate from the actual scanning project because you want to be able to use them, access them, and do whatever you need to. That's why you scanned them in the first place. So a couple methods of doing this, of accessing the images. There's first the traditional way, which would be PDF, a TIFF, a JPEG, something like that. So we scan the microfilm, create those PDFs, create those files, and deliver them to you. Maybe you have an existing system at your office that you're importing these into. You have a document management system. Whatever you're doing with them, you're getting them delivered likely on a USB drive, maybe an FTP electronic transfer. That's what we consider the traditional method. Alternatively, you have our digital reel application, which if we're providing digital reel for you, we'd scan the records and immediately import them into digital reel as soon as they're ready. So during the project, you'd see images and entire rolls popping up as they're done. And what that allows you to do is through our secure hosted application, you can log in, view those records, optimize images using grayscale image enhancement, globally search using text search and index search your entire collection to quickly get to those records and access them as soon as you need them. And if you do go with digital reel, a lot of our clients use it as a primary method of accessing their records, but you can also use it as a secondary method. So you may already have an application or you just want the images however you want them delivered to you, but you may use it as a backup for optimizing those images, adjusting them if you find one that doesn't look that great in a PDF format. Or it may just be as a backup disaster recovery, which many of our clients use as well. They have their application, they have their images on site, but they want a disaster recovery backup just in case because things may happen. That wraps it up. That's a short guide to microfilm scanning. You should have a good idea of what you're getting into and what you can expect when you start a microfilm scanning project. Thank you for watching. This is the Digital Imaging Channel. I'm Will, and make sure to subscribe to keep getting videos like this, and we will see you next time.